William Can Do. I want to say rest in peace, but y'all know how I feel about that. I don't think there is any rest for a non-believer after death. And it's a shame. I dealt with Will on a few occasions 2 or 3 years ago. And he always struck me as a rather nasty fellow. Always having a cuss word to throw at me. Always bitter and pained and upset. And I was never able to break through that. We lost contact aside from a few comments here and there, and I didn't know anything about him. Now I kind of feel bad about that. I kind of feel like I failed and that I should have done more, but it isn't about me. I didn't make the choice to take my own life. Will did. And that brings up a whole host of questions. Suicide is never the answer. But I wonder, why wasn't anybody close enough to see the signs? Why wasn't anybody close enough to try to stop it? I'm not blaming anybody, because ultimately in a suicide, it's the person who commits the suicide who's to blame. But when something like this happens, it kind of shakes everybody to look back and say, wow, did we enable this guy or were we helping him? Only you and God can answer that question. It's a shame when someone passes like this, taking their own life. But to be honest with you, watching YouTube, I fear that for a lot of my atheist friends. And there's really a sense of hopelessness, because the harder I preach, the harder they fight, and the worse it makes it. So I try to look at my part as being one of many voices that cry out and say, hey, give Jesus a chance. And if they don't, unfortunately, I do end up pulling ties and moving on. But that is what Jesus told us to do. If they won't hear our words, dust off your feet as a testimony against them and move on. That's what he told the disciples to do when they were preaching to the Jews. And it's a principle I've always incorporated into our ministry. I don't look for instantaneous overnight sanctification, but I do look for signs of growth. And if there aren't any, I don't see a point in wasting my time and energy trying to force somebody to accept something that they're not going to accept. I think sometimes it's important for Christians to recognize when they're doing more harm than good. And unfortunately, I don't think we do. Now the question might be asked, well, what good would it have been if the Christians had just turned their back on Will and let him be? And that's an answer we'll never know, because plenty of Christians did talk to him continually. And somewhere in my mind, I hope that in his dying breath, Will repented and found Christ. But that's something I won't know until I'm gone. That's probably the hardest part for a Christian to deal with. If you truly believe in heaven, hell, the Lord, Satan, especially if you had time invested. Well, let's just pray that the Lord guides us and gives us the strength to do what we're supposed to do what we need to do. There are a lot of other atheists on YouTube who are, quite frankly, in the same boat as Will. And the only way to honor his memory is to learn from your experience with him. My prayers go out to the family of Will Can Do and his friends. And there's really not much more to say. Jesus is the answer, the Lord and Savior of the world. And without him, committing suicide doesn't get you out of all the pain and pressure that you're feeling here. It basically puts you in a pressure cooker where things are going to get worse. So don't let that happen to you. If you're not a believer, invest some time and find out why you're not a believer, and see if you can't come to some accord with Christ. Well, until next time, happy Jesus Day. God bless. Peace out.